Okay, 7.5, exercise 7. Exercise 7 says a wine producer has 100 acres of land to produce grapes. It costs $400 an acre to plant X acres of X grapes and $500 an acre to plant Y acres of Y grapes, and there is no more than $48,000 available, so write a system of inequalities to describe the situation. Now it says write a system of inequalities to describe a situation, and so the advice was read the problem carefully and know what you need to solve for. Well, all we need to do is write a system of inequalities, and a system of inequalities is two different sets of relationships with the same variables in it. So let x represent the unknown variable and represent everything else in terms of x. Well, we don't have to do that. We don't have to make a diagram. This is actually a relatively simple one. I'll show you how. Let's look where it alludes to maximums or minimums. And in this case, a wine producer has 100 acres of land, so it's going to be less than or equal to 100 acres getting planted. $400, $500 has no more than $48,000 available, so the total cost is going to be less than or equal to $48,000. So we're going to end up writing something that says less than or equal to $48,000, something is less than or equal to $48,000, something is going to be less than or equal to 100, because those are both maximums. Maximum money, maximum space. What else do we know? We know that you're planting X acres of X grapes and Y acres of Y grapes. So the number of acres is X plus Y. The X grapes plus the Y grapes. There's one inequality right there. Has to be less than or equal to 100. And with regard to the money thing, well, it costs us $400 an acre for the X acres of X grapes and $500 for Y acres of Y grapes. And don't get confused because it's Y acres of Y grapes. Just say Y acres of green grapes and X acres of red grapes. It doesn't matter. They're just confusing you with X and Y's. We know there's $400 an acre. $400 for each acre. So if I have 5 acres, it's going to be $2,000. If I have 10 acres, it's going to be $4,000. If I have X acres, it's going to be 400 times X. That's what it's going to cost for the X grapes. And what's it going to cost for the Y grapes? $500 an acre, so 500 Y. So there's our system of inequalities that it asks for. Now there's other information that it shows in the answer key, and it shows what the minimum value and the maximum value for each of these variables is. Well, that's not something you have to calculate. Well, you do have to calculate it, but it's not all that difficult. What's the minimum number for X and for Y? 0. X is going to be greater than or equal to 0. And Y is going to be greater than or equal to 0. It doesn't say anywhere in this that we have to spend all that money or use all that land. So it could be as small as 0. But what's the maximum value for X? X has to be less than 100. If it was 100 acres being planted with X grapes, it would cost us $40,000. So it has to be less than or equal to 100. You can't have more than 100 acres. You can certainly have less all you like. And whether or not you get to plant some Y grapes depends on how many X grapes you planted. So those are the limits for X. And for Y, of course, you could plant 0Y if you wanted. How many could you actually plant? What's the most that you could plant in Y? Well, it's $500 an acre, and it looks to me like 500 times 100 is going to be 50,000. That's going to be too much money. We've only got 48,000. So the answer there is 96. If you plant 96 acres at $500 an acre, it will equal 48,000. So these are the limits of the two variables. And that's your answer key.